Oh, you're usually not making money until like 3 years in. And so, if you have pretty much any other business, it takes a bit to get going. And in this kind of business, you can be in the green in the first 6 months. And so just know that like this business, this kind of business structure has so much potential. And some weeks, some months, even some years, I've had great years and not so great years. That's normal. So don't let that be the thing that scares you from inviting, scares you from really taking it seriously, because as I'm sure you've heard a million times from other guest speakers or people on the National Wake Up Call, this business and literally everything else is all about consistency. You have to continue to show up on the good days, on the bad days. You do not grow when it's comfortable, right? When everything works, and when I have coaches come to me, I gotta take a step back. I have a lot on my plate. Your business isn't going to grow when like everything's perfect and your schedule looks like this and everything's this and social media is easy and everything's perfect. No, like that's not when you grow. If it was like that, everybody would do it. And it's not that only a certain amount of people, only a certain percentage can be successful in this business, is that most people don't realize or don't want to say, I have to work my regular job, or I have to, be a full-time, stay-at-home mom, because that is a job. I do not want kids. And I have mad respect for you guys that are mamas, because that's just a lot. So whether you're working a job or, being a full-time mom and you want to build a business, I teach this with my team, but I also work with one-on-one clients, is that you have to go through a puberty, the puberty of your goals, the puberty of your business, the puberty of your habits. Puberty is like this awkward stage where like you don't really know what's going on and you're uncomfortable, whatever. And so there's going to be this time period where you have to make sacrifices. You have less time, but it's not going to be that way forever. There were times in the beginning of my business when I was up at like 1 o'clock in the morning drinking espresso just so I could like get more work done, because I was working 3 jobs at the time. I knew it wasn't going to be like that forever, but I just made that commitment to know that this is going to be the awkward, uncomfortable phase that I'm going to have to go through in order to get to the part where I have a little bit more time freedom and money freedom, and I can kind of make that schedule. So anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent, but that's essentially my story and just some tidbits to throw at you. So hopefully that's helpful to somebody. But let's talk about the fear of inviting. So going back to my story, from the day I was born up until about 21 years old, I was always extroverted, loved talking to people. In school, I was like, let me be the follow the leader. I was a teacher's pet. I was just very extroverted. And when I got into this emotionally abusive relationship, from about 21 to 24, I became a shell of a person. I was introverted. I didn't like talking to people. I hated all of it. And so when I started coaching was when I was in my kind of introverted phase, and I had to get back into my old self. So I did struggle in the beginning, even though I'm like loud and extroverted now. I really struggled to get past that fear in the beginning, because of course the normal things like you're afraid of what people are going to think or whatever. So I kind of want to talk about fear itself. But before I get into that, just one quick tip. Social media is meant to be social. Don't be afraid to reach out to people and have a conversation. Don't become a robot. Don't become this like, hi, my name is Alexis and I'm a Beachbody coach. You should join my group. Like nobody has conversations like that. So don't try to be anybody. Just talk to people on social media as if you were talking to your friend. There should be no like switching that goes on and off of you. Like, this is how I talk to potential customers and this is how I talk to my friends. Like, I am real, raw, authentically me in every single, whether you see me in person or you see me on social media or in my conversations, I'm the same exact person. And I think that is why I've been successful, is because there's going to be some people that don't like that. That's okay. Like I'm just fine with that. So just keep that in mind when it comes to social media. But let's talk about fear itself, right? So fear is, because we think we have like a fear of inviting, but fear is simply a perception, right? So it's like false evidence appearing real. Fear is not an actual thing. It's only the feeling is only of something that can happen or may happen. So it's more about being afraid of, or not even afraid of, but it's the anticipation of the act. So you're not afraid of inviting. You have worry, anxiety, and the anticipation of the act of inviting because of what? Failure. And I really don't think that we have fear. I think that we're like fear of inviting. It's more of the fear of what's going to happen. Because what are you afraid of? You're afraid of the failure of you invite someone to your group and they say no. You invite someone to join your team and they say no. And if they say no, then that means that you're a failure and you suck. That's what you have in your head, right? But what I teach very consistently throughout like all of my content and in my groups is that the fear that failure doesn't have to be a thing if you don't let it be a thing. So if you can go into your invites in your conversation and you say, well, I'm going to send an invite, but I don't have a fear of inviting because I can't fail. If someone says no, that doesn't mean I failed. Take the power away from failure. If I send an invite, and I talk about this all the time, but it's about planting a seed, not hearing yes. Every single invite I sent, every single coach invite, when I put polls up, my goal is never to hear yes from people. My goal is to plant a seed. So with that in mind, I literally can never fail because the minute I send the invite, the seed is planted. My goal was never to hear yes in the first place, so it's not scary. So it's about doing these little things that instead of focusing on the fear, it's taking away what are you actually afraid of, and it's failure. So it's kind of essentially breaking that down. Thomas Edison, when he was creating the light bulb, said, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work. And if you can go about that with your business, with inviting, with conversations, whatever it is, and you say, this doesn't work, or, somebody said no, or, my challenge group doesn't have a lot of engagement. You didn't fail. And you always want to make sure you're paying attention to how you can get better and improve, of course, but it's not that you failed. You just found one way that didn't work. So it's like, okay, let's not try that anymore. Let's try something else. So just something to keep in mind. So how to kind of get to that place where you let go of the fear of failure. So number one is lots of personal development. You hear that from every successful coach. It works. Rob Pearson, you don't know Rob and Chelsea Pearson, they're amazing. But one time on a national wake up call, Rob Pearson said, instead of 10xing your invites and conversations, if fear and failure and all that is a big thing for you, 10x your personal development. Because if you cannot get past that fear and you're like, oh, listen, Alexis, like Bailey's already told me I need to send all the invites and she hit Success Club 452 because she's just not scared. She can do all these things, but like I can't get past that fear. So then instead of 10xing your invites, which eventually you can, instead they'll send your invites. Don't 10x that right now. 10x your personal development. Meet yourself where you're at. Because I promise you, if you have confidence in yourself and you move past that fear of failure or fear of anything, it's going to be easier for you. You're not going to have to force yourself to invite because you're going to be like, I got this. Like, it's no big deal. I'm sure you've heard of using affirmations, but sometimes we focus our affirmations solely on like, I am confident, or I'm going to make, this money. Try forming affirmations around your specific fears or the things that you're afraid is going to happen. So around some of my affirmations have been around, people come to me every day wanting to join my team, or everybody, my challenge groups are filled. So kind of these things that have to do with either your fears or the things that you'd want to happen that lead you to the more money, that lead you to the more success, because you're really focusing the affirmation specifically on that exact fear or that exact task. Like maybe you say, if you're really scared of invites, say something like, I have no fear of invites and everyone tells me yes, or something along those lines. Also, your mindset is so important. When it comes to finding new people to build relationships with, inviting, whatever it is, if you go into it, because one thing that, and Bailey talked about it when she spoke to my team, but one of the main ways I find new people to talk to on social media is by finding either accounts or finding pictures, because I don't really look through hashtags. I look through the hashtags, but find a picture that has like a lot of likes and comments, and then I go through the likes and comments of that post. But when I teach my team that and they go do it, they're like, I do what you say, and it's just like, it just doesn't work. Or I'm always finding Beachbody coaches, and I'm like, I can guarantee you, because you hate it so much, every time you go to do that, you're like, oh, time to sit down and find people. This is going to be really fun. Like, every time I do this, if that's your attitude towards you trying to find your possible new best friend, because some of my best friends, people who were literally bridesmaids in my wedding, I found through social media and through coaching. It's insane. So I go into it and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to find my new best friend and we're going to go on retreats together. And it's going to be the best. Like, that's the kind of energy I come to it. And that's why if I open my phone right now, I could find 10 people. It wouldn't be hard because I come with that energy. So make sure that you're coming with that energy as well. Okay. So I love metaphors. Who loves metaphors? I don't know if you do, but I do. I feel like they just make sense to my ADHD brain sometimes. But I want to talk about obviously the process of inviting, because we talked about the fear around it and kind of what you kind of do to change your perspective. But one of the things that, if you're still really struggling with it, you've probably heard from Bailey, you've probably heard from other guest speakers where they're just like, just send the invite, just get out there and send it. And you're like, but you don't understand. I want to know what you say. I want to read your script. Can I see what other people say? Let me watch a power hour so I can see what this person says. Yes, those are helpful, but until you do it, you're not going to know if you're good at it. So let's use the metaphor of your first kiss. And I'm not talking about just like peck on the lips. Like I'm talking full blown tongue, mouth, slobber kissing, that whole thing. So before you've ever done that, like before you've had that first real like make out kiss, you don't know if you're good at it, right? Like you don't know if you're good, you don't know if you're bad, you don't know what you need to fix until you're sitting face to face with Bobby from math class and you're like, all right, let's do this, like spin the bottle. And then once you do that, like, you can see other people in the corner, like doing it, you can watch what they're doing, but you're like, I don't know what's going on inside of their mouth. And somebody can tell you what to do, but like, essentially you still don't know, like, am I good at that? So once you're face-to-face Bobby from math class, spin the bottle and you do it and you're done, then you're like, okay, that was really bad. That felt weird. I know what I need to fix. Or you're like, wow, that was really good. Like I was pretty good at that. Like I'm proud of myself. Or you're like, I still don't know. And then from there, you can kind of like ask questions based off of like what you felt was weird. Like the nose placement and what's too much like drool or slobber or whatever, like then you'll kind of know. So the same thing goes for inviting. You're sitting there trying to get people to tell you how to do it, but you won't know how to do it until you rip the Band-Aid off and you just send it. You should see some of my invites. My invite to the coach that joined and ended up being a top 10 coach was terrible. It was terrible, but I still sent it. And now my invites have gotten better and better. Literally even now, like my invites I send now are way different than what I sent a year ago. I used to send novels, like, cause I always thought if I created enough FOMO, people would be interested, and they definitely worked. But now I'm like super short and sweet. Like you're looking at my Instagram story, I'm like, yo girl, I saw you creeping. Like, have you ever thought about joining my group? Like that. Straight up, super simple. And then it creates that like, well, what group are you talking about? And then we can create the conversation from there versus if before I would be like, hey, I saw you in my Instagram story and I just want to let you know I have this group and it's really fun and we're going to do this and like it would not word vomit about the products, but like try to like create all of this interest. So I really just keep it short and sweet and let them kind of like have that interest from there. But again, I only learned that because I was okay with trial and error. I was okay with, again, not failing, but finding ways that didn't work. So it's not necessarily about like getting really good and perfecting the process in order to start sending the right invites. It's just about starting it to figure it out, right? Because it's just like, again, another metaphor. It's just like riding a bike. Like you can't figure out how to do it unless you fall and you figure out how to balance and figure out, what works and doesn't work. Okay. So that's essentially all that I have. I can answer any questions if anybody has any questions about anything, but I know I could talk for like 60 hours. So I like to stop myself. So I'll just keep talking.
I saw one, it says, what's your best recommendation for PD for overcoming fear and or gaining confidence?
The best personal development is just doing it. No, I'm just kidding. But that is the truth. But, so overcoming fear, I'm all about, when it comes to like overcoming the fear, it's not necessarily how can I put a Band-Aid on the problem of having the fear. It's figuring out where the fear comes from. I'm all about figuring out the root. So I'm trying to think, I don't know. There's definitely got to be a book. Confidence, essentially, I guess if we're going back to like figuring out the root, because if you have fear, where does that fear come from? What are the limiting beliefs? Is it something that your parents told you growing up? Is it something that somebody, a toxic relationship told you? Is it something that you saw on social media? Where is that lack of fear coming from? Mastering Your Mean Girl by Melissa Ambrosini is a really great book. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about that. That's really great. Anything by Gabby Bernstein, again, it's not specifically just a Band-Aid on the fear, because that's why I probably can't think of any books, because I don't know any books that are specific about like overcoming the fear. It's about getting to the root. So Gabby Bernstein, in a lot of her books, is about like trusting the universe, trusting yourself, and letting go of the stranglehold you have on like what your life looks like and the way you want it to look. And if you can just get out there and just do your thing, you're going to find that overcomes the fear itself. You know what I mean? So I think books like that kind of dig deeper into you, can essentially help you with that. Also, The Four Agreements is one of my favorites. I think it's a book like everybody should read every year by Don Miguel Ruiz. It talks about these 4 different agreements that you kind of make with yourself throughout your life. But one of the most important ones that I think boil down to where the fear comes from is making assumptions. So essentially, if you make assumptions about what you think somebody's going to think when you send the invite, or you sent the invite, they ignored you, and then you go on and you make assumptions that they hate, MLMs, and they don't, want to join you, and they're talking, behind your back about like what you said, when they probably were like feeding their kid and they threw up on them, and then like the UPS man came and they accidentally forgot to respond to your message. Like, imagine if you spent all day stressing out over a message where somebody just was like, oh, I forgot to respond, and you like had this whole story in your head. Even if that story was true, why make the assumptions anyway and just like torture yourself? You know what I mean? Yeah, highly recommend it. It's good.
I was gonna ask, what does a little snippet of your work hour look like? Do you
My what?
Like power hour? Do you do pockets? Do you sit down to work?
So my business has changed so much because I do this like 100% full time. So only this year, my goal, my mission has been work less, make more, because I was a workaholic. Like, woke up, and from literally the moment I woke up to the moment I closed my eyes, I was working all the time. And there were breaks. I would eat lunch and I'd work out and I'd have like, some family time, but like any other time in between was always filled with work. Cause I was like, if I can invite one more person and do this, like I'll be successful. And then I burnt myself out, and I burnt myself out multiple times. But this year was like the final straw. And I was like, I can't do this. So I ended up working with a business coach, and she kind of helped me like get into this mode of work less and make more. And because when you have these like little pockets where you're, you 5 minutes here and you go to the, the grocery store, or the, somewhere with your significant other, and you're in the car and you're sending as many invites as you can. Obviously, if you have a million kids and you don't have you can't really make a structured schedule, then of course fill in where you can. But if you can work at least an hour or 2 a day or more, having business hours is really the best thing. So now, because if I would work all the time and work when I went to the store and work 5 minutes here and work 5 minutes here, I felt like I was working all the time, but it wasn't as intentional. And now I work from about 11 to 4 every day. Sometimes I work a little bit earlier in the morning, but essentially 11 to 4 every day. And I'm very intentional about my time, because once 4 o'clock rolls around, unless obviously like I have a call, I'm done. And I have increased my income. I just feel more at peace. So essentially, like, I just work throughout that time. But specifically with power hours, my power hours always consist of just essentially being in my inbox. So I use Google I use Google Streak, but I use Google Keep. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's kind of like this little like sticky note to-do list thing you can have. But I have my morning block non-negotiables, and there are 6 things on it. These are the things I guess I would consider my power hour. These 6 things, no matter what my day looks like, these get done. As long as these 6 things get done, it doesn't matter what else I do for the rest of the day. Anything else from there is a bonus. So what those 6 things consist of is I do follow-ups, Google Streak, but follow-ups for 20 minutes. And I do everything in time. So like I could do my follow-ups for longer. I could clear out all my follow-ups. And if I have the extra time, I do. But my goal is to do essentially like what my non-negotiables are in the time allotted. And if I have more time, I do. I don't want to, because again, I would overwork myself, and I still hit all my goals. So follow-ups for 20 minutes. I send at least 5 to 10 invites. And that might surprise some of you if like you're used to hearing send a million invites. I do think that in the beginning of your business, you should probably lean on a bit more. I was starting at least minimum 60 new conversations every single week when I first was working my business. I've never been a huge number person. Like, shout out to Bailey, like always got mad respect for people who hit high numbers. But like you'll hear all the time, there are some people that hit like Ashley Molstead like used to hit like successful like 370 whatever, like legit, that's insane. I've never hit higher than 40. That's always been like my number. So there's a million ways to be successful in this business, but like 10, if you want to make this a full-time business, 10 should be a non-negotiable, not 5. You're always going to come up short on goals. I'm getting off on tangents here, but this is what happens when get asked questions. But if you're gonna set, you'd rather come up short on $1 million goal than come up short on a $100,000 goal. So always, like, I set my goal as 40 every single month, and I've only ever hit that once. But do you think I would ever hit like 25 every month if I aimed for 10? No. So it's about setting that. So anyway, follow up for 20 minutes. I send at least 5 to 10 challenge group invites. I do at least 50 touch points. That is anywhere. Instagram, you know, looking through my text messages, randomly texting someone, on Facebook, like anywhere, as long as I'm doing 50 touch points. It can be a quick message. It can be an invite. It can be anything, whatever I feel is necessary at the time. The other thing I do is I check my archive, my polls and my insights for the day. So if I did polls for the day before, if there's any like insights I want to check from like posts that are doing well, engaging with old comments, because I don't like kind of respond to them as they come in, because again, that's not intentional. So I have a set time that I do that. So I do it 1 time a day. And I also check, the fifth thing would be check my inboxes. I also only check my inbox once a day. So once I clear out my Facebook, text message, Instagram, and email, I do not respond to anybody unless it's the end of the month and I need to hurry up and get to somebody. But again, being burnt out, if somebody responds to me, they can wait 12 to 24 hours. I do not need to respond to them every single second, again, unless it's the end of the month, but that's how I have always done it. And then the last is networking for 30 minutes. That is going on Instagram or Facebook groups and just engaging with people for about 30 minutes. So those are like my 6 power hour things. And obviously like checking into my challenge group, but I don't even consider that like a task because I do that every day regardless. So that was a super long answer to your question.
All right, perfect. You started coaching again as an introvert. For those of us that are, how did you overcome that and know what to say to people to open up that door? How did you converse? I struggle with actually wanting to talk to new people and finding those that I could be actual friends with.
So I always say, if you're introverted, well, let me finish this statement before I offend people. If you're introverted, you have to work on that, but you don't have to be extroverted in order to be successful. There are plenty of successful introverts in the world. Like half the freaking like celebrities and like singers you hear all the time, how like introverted they are. So you don't have to become extroverted, but you have to figure out where are my like weaker points. Not that again, being an introvert makes you weaker, but if it holds you back in certain areas, you're gonna have to figure out how you can improve on that area. If you're introverted, again, asking yourself, like if I struggle with starting conversations, where does that come from? Why am I struggling so much to have those conversations? And just kind of, and it's gonna be the answer's gonna be different for everybody. So for me, I was introverted because my ex-boyfriend was super controlling. He didn't allow me to hang out with my friends. He needed to know the password to everything, needed to read all of my text messages. I wasn't allowed to do anything. So I got to the point where I didn't even bother hanging out with people because it was exhausting to have to report back to him all the time. And so what I started to do to come out of my shell was 1, lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of personal development. And 2, and this is something that I didn't even realize I was doing at the time, but now I get my one-on-one clients to do, is make like lists of things to help you get outside of your comfort zone. I make my clients create comfort zone checklists. So you know how you look at the back of a hot sauce meter and it's like, you know, a little bit spicy, kind of spicy, super spicy. Create a list for yourself and don't like essentially force yourself to do something that like you would rather die than do. But if you know you're like, I'd really like to get better at that, create a list of things that like are kind of scary. Like maybe if doing a Facebook Live is a little bit scary for you, put that on your list to accomplish in the next month. If that's really hella scary, then, you know, put that more so at the very end of the list. But think of different situations, things that you know you can do and that you see other people doing that you kind of like make as a list over extended period of time. You don't have to do everything all at once. Again, meet yourself where you're at, but the more you challenge yourself, it's like immersion therapy. You know, when they have like on the Maury show, the girl's like afraid of pickles. Like if you're afraid of pickles, like put yourself in a room of pickles and you're going to realize nothing's happening. It's all just, not that it's all in your head, but like you can handle it. So the more you put yourself in those situations, the more you'll be a little bit more comfortable and it just becomes easier. Like think of any of you, like maybe the first scary thing you ever did for your business, maybe it was just posting on social media in general. It's probably a lot easier now than it was before. It's just because you did it. So if you struggle with those conversations, it's kind of just like ripping the Band-Aid off and doing a little bit more, getting yourself more uncomfortable. More uncomfortable you make yourself, the easier it gets to just feel uncomfortable and you can do it.
I love
my
that.
my business coach, she's a pretty penny. Most expensive thing I've ever done in my entire life, but definitely really worth it. She is, let me find her Instagram. So her name is really long, but it's Project Me, like M-E, Project Me underscore with underscore Tiffany. But I highly recommend following her. She's great. I'll put her in here. Can't do both at once. I have massive ADD. So that's her, but she's definitely not cheap to work with, but she's amazing. She does offer 90-minute sessions, so you could always do that with her. Still not cheap, but she absolutely changed my life. Like by far the best investment I've ever made in my entire life. She's just amazing. And I found her, I happened to be on her podcast 3 years ago, but she was the one that reached out to me. So that's essentially how I found her. But I found like other business coaches and things like that, just kind of stumbling around on Instagram. If someone reaches out after 4, do you follow up the next day or right away? No, I don't. Like if I've already cleared out my inbox, like I haven't cleared it out today because I've had kind of a busy day. But I don't even know if I'll do it because again, I try to keep those business hours and I've done a lot of work. I just haven't been able to get to it. It's the beginning of the month. I still work for my goals. I treat the first 5 days of the month like the end of the month, but like I'll get to those. So on a normal day, like if it's 12 and I've already cleared out my inbox, there's no need. If somebody decides to join another coach because I didn't send them a share cart within the 18 hours that they messaged me, then they're probably not my people anyway, because I do not want to become that coach, that person for people where I just respond right away. Cause I used to be that person and it will burn you out. I have a very large team and because I had a top 10 coach quit, I gained 10,000 customers when she did that. So I have a lot of them don't necessarily order. So it's not as exciting as it seems, but like I have a very large like customer and coach base. And so covering the fear of success, we talked about the fear of failure. A lot of people have the fear of success and don't realize it because they say, I can't even handle what's on my plate right now. How am I going to handle more customers or more coaches? You figure it out as you go and you meet yourself where you're at. You try what works and you figure out that it doesn't. I tried to be that person that was like, I'm going to be that coach that responds to everybody super quickly. They're never going to have to wait for me. And then my family, my parents, my significant other, my mental health, my like leisurely time was hindered because of that. And so now 24 hours, you will most likely always hear from me. 24 hours essentially. So most of the top 10 coaches are introverts. Yes, very true. My coach that was a top 10 coach was also an introvert. How do you avoid responding to messages in social media after time block workout?